Hello and welcome to Workshop in Essay Writing, ENG1100. Today I'm going to take you through the course outline, and I hope that you have it in front of you because you'll want to make additional notes as we go along. So even though it sounds like it's a simple introduction, there's going to be quite a bit that we're going to be doing today. All right, so we start then with a couple of nuts and bolts things. The lectures will be online, and that means that they will be asynchronous. If you're not quite sure what that means, I'll be sending the lectures to you ahead of time, and then you can watch them, and then we can discuss them in the workshop component. And so if you take a look there, the workshop component and the due dates are all there in the very first, 7 or 8 lines of the course outline. And just to keep in mind, you will want to always submit your papers, assignments, whatever, through Brightspace as a PDF. Okay? PDFs work better when it comes to Brightspace. You have there my name and then my email address as well. And my office hours and my office number, well, I don't think that really matters, but I just thought I'd add them anyway. In other words, you're probably never going to see me, right? But, all right, that's all right. Anyway, so obviously the course is offered online, and that's that information is there more for when you first looked into courses, all right? And so, as I said, I'm going to be reading a few things like verbatim, and then I'll elaborate as we go along. So, the video lectures, they'll be released on Brightspace prior to the actual class date, and then you can download them, watch at your own pace, and I'll also give you lecture notes as well. So I'm going to be giving you quite a bit of information before we get to the workshop component. And then in the workshop component, that's where we can just discuss any questions you have or, anything that arise. Now, the one thing I want to make a note of right now, a number of assignments will be placed on Brightspace. I've got a number of assignments only because there's 1 or 2 that won't be. Let me reword that. Most of the things that you're going to be handing in will be submitted through Brightspace. But like I said, there may be 1 or 2 where I go off the board on that. So don't worry about that. We'll figure that out down the road. There's quite a bit, by the way, that, something may arise and I may think, okay, maybe we could do it this way instead. That happens every year. And so, I'm just reading here as I go along. Whenever I get quiet, I'm just reading. Okay, so, but yeah, so we'll see how that goes. But like I said, almost everything will be submitted to Brightspace, and I think that's pretty straightforward. Now, you'll notice as well, the course outline looks a bit odd because I have number 1, number 2. I'm going to start talking about number 2 now. Usually I wouldn't have that in a lecture, but because we're doing this online, I just want to be really clear about everything that we're doing, okay? So, suggested texts. We have a standard text, the Canadian Practical Stylist, and that just deals with many of the ideas that I'll be talking about on the course. And that has to do with style, grammar, things like that. Then we have the book They Say, I Say, and that's where, I'll be pulling out some readings or what have you. And you do not have to buy any texts for this course. 0, none. I will make sure that I make available to you everything you need on Brightspace. Everything. Okay? So, just want to make sure that's all clear. Yeah, I think so. All right. So, any questions so far? Just kidding. Now, for some reason, this didn't print right. Anyway, all right, so the objectives of the course. I'm on page 2 now. The course is designed to equip you with the skills and strategies necessary to critically read and summarize academic papers and write university-level essays. Pretty straightforward, right? By the end of the course, you will have learned how to introduce methods on how to write well-structured, logical prose expressed from a critical perspective. So, as I said, today we're just touching the surface, if you know what I mean. We're going to get it a lot more detailed as we go along. You'll see, okay? And the course is divided into 2 parts. And this is kind of important. So in the first part of the course, the first 6 weeks, we will be dealing with summarizing and reading critically, things like that. And so let me just see, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself here. Yeah, writing methods, grammar skills, things like that. And then I just said things like that twice. I shouldn't have said that, but anyway. And so, as I said, the video notes. Well, if you're watching this, you already know that the video and notes are already on Brightspace, right? But I just want to be clear about everything, okay? And then, yeah, and then I'll be sending out email every once in a while just to update us on, any clarifications we need or anything like that. And then the second component, we'll be having a workshop once a week, and through Zoom. And I think the Zoom part is pretty straightforward. All you have to do is go to our course and hit Zoom, and you'll see that there are Zoom meetings already set up for you. And so you just connect whenever we're ready, and yeah, then we should be fine with that. And yeah, so the Zoom aspect, the workshop aspect, we'll be dealing with ongoing, assignments or questions or whatever you have. All right. All right. Now the grading system. Now this is where it gets interesting. So I'm in number 4 now. You will have a portfolio, and in the portfolio, you will have a quiz component, and the quiz component, you'll simply be given 2 quizzes throughout the term, and each quiz will deal with 10 sentences, and you will simply fix the sentences if need be. And so, and don't worry about that. We will obviously have a lecture on that. I'm trying to think now. Lecture 3, I believe, will be starting the grammar. We'll do more and more as we go along. And so, the quiz component, they will be on Brightspace. I will release them at a certain date. I'm going to talk more about that later on, okay? But as you see there, it says timed online. Now, the first 3 things that we see here all say timed online. That means you will only be given a certain time through Brightspace where I will release information, and then you will have to submit it to the portal before the portal closes. No exceptions on that. And I don't want to get into why the department has chosen to do it that way, but that is not my rule. That is a departmental rule. And so basically no exceptions to that. So let me explain again. The first 3 components of the course, the quiz component, then an article summary. I'll get into all the details about that later. And then the midterm, they will all be timed online. Okay? And as I said, and I will come back to that in just a while. And then you will have an outline, and then an introduction and a bibliography, and then your final term paper. The introduction bibliography, that's a component that I've decided to do together, and I think that'll work very well, as you'll see as we go through the rest of the outline. Now, in number 5, there's a few things. I don't even know if I need to talk to you about them or not, but these are just policies from the Faculty of Arts. So these aren't my policies. These are simply things that I am supposed to go by. And so let me just see if there's anything here. Rewriting of class notes is not permitted. Okay, that's an important one. So if for some reason you're not happy with your grade and you want to rewrite, sorry, but that's simply not allowed at the university in the Faculty of Arts. And then obviously, all your assignments must be completed in order to earn credit for the course. So in other words, if you miss like a major assignment or something like that, well, there's not much I can do about that. And because you're not allowed to rewrite, or if you miss a deadline in Brightspace, sorry, like again, these are not my policies. That's just the way the university sets things up. All right? Okay. And so the other thing there, make sure that you always include or submit as a PDF for any assignments that you do. PDF works the best for Brightspace. Okay? So make sure you do that as well. And then obviously do not ask for any extensions without, obviously medical certificates from, I have the University Health Services or some other substantiated example. Okay, sorry, that didn't come out right, but I think you know what I mean. All right, like in other words, if you really need an extension, you have to provide like certificates showing that in fact it's legit. All right, okay. Now we're going to get into some interesting stuff here. Let's take a look at number 7. On the subject of documentation and research, APA or MLA style is mandatory for this course. So why don't I just take a moment here, and you might want to make a note or two. APA stands for American Psychological Association. If you are in the social sciences, okay, you will be using APA. If you are in the arts, you will be using MLA, which is the Modern Language Association. And so figure out which one you will need for the rest of your university career and simply use that in this course. In other words, I'm not asking you to do both. I'm simply asking you, make sure you know which one works best for you and then get used to that style. Now, I'll be talking about those things as we go along, so don't email me about that, after you watch this first lecture, like, I don't understand what that means, or don't worry, we'll get to all that stuff. As a matter of fact, don't email me about anything that happens in this first lecture today, because all I'm doing is setting up everything we're going to be doing later on, okay? So, I'm glad I remembered that. But anyway, all right, so if you take a look at the course website, I actually have some very handy, I've got about 5 or 6, can't even remember how I worded them, but they're course files. And there I show you an example of the first page of an APA paper and the first page of an MLA paper. And why my hand is doing this right now, I don't know. But anyway, so we have all that is there for you. And I'll talk more about the course website in just a second. But anyway, so you have all those things there. And then let me just see here. Oh, I skipped over one thing there. Keep a portfolio of everything that you submit. Only because there may come a time where I might have lost an assignment, or maybe you didn't send it to the right place, or who knows what. So make sure you always hang on to everything until you have a final grade that is actually posted, right? And so... And when I say you may be asked to turn in your portfolio with their final written assignment, I'm going to talk more about that as we go through the course, okay? As a matter of fact, I'll talk a bit more of that today. Then, for more sophisticated documentation, there is a wonderful, wonderful website, and it's probably the best in the world. Most people agree with that statement when it comes to the English language, okay? And that is called the OWL. Okay, just the way it sounds, OWL. It's an acronym for something else. And it's the OWL at Purdue. And so if you were to type in, seriously, if you were to type in the OWL at Purdue, that would be something that you want to hang on to, like make that a favorite for the rest of your university career. Because any essays that you'll be asked to write, the OWL at Purdue will give you so many different possibilities in terms of documentation. Like how do I cite an interview that I did with my grandfather? I'm being serious now. How do I cite an interview that I did with my grandfather about a war or something like that? Right? Well, there are ways to do that. Now, do I have all that information off the top of my head? No, I don't. But if you go to the OWL at Purdue, later on, I will be showing you many things about documentation, the stuff that more or less we need in general. But when it comes to really specific things, the OWL will answer all of your questions. APA, MLA, even Chicago. Even though I strongly recommend you don't use Chicago, unless, of course, you need to for your discipline. Okay? All right. So the OWL at Purdue, make it a favorite. Not joking about that, okay? I'm not joking about that. I don't know why I said it that way, but anyway. Okay, now, on page 3, the next thing we have to talk about, academic dishonesty. There's been a shift in terms of how university courses are being offered, especially through virtual media. And so many students now are finding ways to get around academic dishonesty. That is why the first three assignments that we are going to be doing are timed. So, like you may want to rethink how this course is going to go, because you will have to be at your desk ready to go with your computer to get into Brightspace, answer the questions, and get out. And so that is why the department has decided to go with timed assignments. Now, I've done that for the first three, but then after that, I'm being a bit lenient. But I will notice the difference between the first three assignments in terms of style and so many other things, grammar, and then the next assignment after that. I'll be very aware of that, okay? And I don't mean to be sound, like a prick, but all I'm saying is it is very easy nowadays to pick up on academic dishonesty. And so basically we're talking, I think you all know what I'm talking about. And as a matter of fact, every year someone does, I'll use the P word here, plagiarize, and not even realize it. So if it is a small example of plagiarism that I tend to come across, then of course we can talk about that, all right? But if it is a major one, then there may be problems. And so, if I may just finish off that port there, academic dishonesty is prohibited. And if detected, okay, that's the key phrase there, if detected, may result in failure of the assignment, failure of the course, or worse. And I'm not exaggerating there. And so you can find out a whole lot of information about that from the Faculty of Arts calendar. Okay? So, plagiarism examples. Again, don't know if I really want to explain all of that, but it's pretty clear. Cutting and pasting from the internet. That's my favorite. Okay? Cutting and pasting from the internet. Seriously? Like I've actually had examples. These things make me laugh. I've actually had examples of papers where there's one font, one style, then all of a sudden the whole thing changes. And it's like, this is obviously cutting and pasting, and you're not documenting, you're not sourcing or anything like that. It's like, So I guess the best thing to say is if you're going to cheat, do it well. I shouldn't say that, but I think you know what I mean. Like, don't insult my intelligence, right? As little as there is of that. But anyway, all right. And then some of these other things here, pretty straightforward. Obviously, you have to do your own research. Like, you can't outsource research. That actually happened one year, so we had to include that in the course outline. And then, yes, okay, let's talk a bit about this. So, internet sources. Some internet sources you can rely on. Scholarly journals, some things in Google Docs or Google Journal, whatever. But most are not reliable at all. And I think you guys, you should know that by now, right? So basically, by the time we finish this course, you will not be using internet sources at all. At all. Instead, we're going to be looking at different things, and that will start with the library database, which we'll get into later on. And as long as you have a library account, getting into the library database is no problem whatsoever. So I'm just going to read now verbatim. By the time of your final term paper submission, you should not be using web-based sources in your essay or in your works cited. So what I'm really saying there is you don't want to have those big URLs, HTTP in your essay, right? It doesn't look very good to begin with, and it's not really academic. So be careful of that too. All right. And again, if you have any questions on this, hold off, because we're going to be spending weeks together, and all these things will come up, and like there'll be situations where maybe one thing, like maybe there's an exception, or well, I don't even want to go any further on that. Basically, we will talk in the workshops. Okay, in the workshop component, we'll be talking to each other each week in the workshop component. So there might be something that you think, okay, I'm not quite sure about this. Sure, then we can deal with it then. All right? Okay, now let's get to page 4 and let's spend a bit of time on this. All right? I think today's lecture might go, 40 minutes? Not sure. It'll depend on your questions. Raise your hand. I'm joking. You can't. All right. So on page 4 now, we have basically the breakdown for the entire course. There might be one thing I may change, a slight thing here, but it won't be major. Okay? All right. So the way I have it laid out, you have the lectures on the left-hand side in the columns, and then you have the workshops and due dates. Now, we're going to start with today, Introduction to the Course Outline. Then, and now I want to make a note of why I've done this. On the right-hand side, all times indicated are Eastern Time Zone, Canada. Now, I only did this almost as a joke because there was one student a couple of years ago who challenged me and said, well, you didn't say which time zone, so therefore I should have been able to... which I kind of thought was funny, but no, that doesn't work. So there it is. I had to include that. It looks like I'm being really, really anal retentive there, but I'm not. I'm just covering my butt, right? So anyway, and so let's just get into the next lecture here. So in lecture 2, we'll start doing summaries, and I'll start showing you how to do in-text citations, things like that. Oh, so a major portion of the first half of the course will be summaries. It'll be reading and then you summarizing. And that's because we'll be looking at how do authors set up a paper, the structure of the paper, the flow, because we'll basically be trying to do that in the second half of the course with your own work. All right? So that's kind of the way things will work. All right? So, in lecture 2, we'll be doing that. And there'll be an article that will be on Brightspace for you, and I'll be referring to that as well. Okay? Then in lecture 3, we'll have a crash course in grammar and style. And that's a lecture that I wish someone had given me before I started my university career. We'll be doing things, you're going to laugh when I say this, but simple things such as the comma. How do we use a comma effectively? And I know, you're thinking, my goodness, like everybody knows that. No, they don't. And so when I start showing you these things, some of you may get very confused, but I'll fix that confusion. I think you'll see what I mean by that. All right? And so, in the workshops then, we'll be talking about all these things as we go along. All right? So in other words, just repeating what I said earlier, the lectures will go out before the dates where we're actually sitting, like where we're actually together. You'll already have had time to watch the lectures. Then, in the workshop, we'll just discuss everything that's been going on. Okay? Then we'll be looking at from subject to thesis, the virtual library tour, and structure. So, structure is one thing that I'm going to be pushing over and over and over again. The content of your paper will be important, of course. But unless you really understand structure and how to put the paper together, the content can get lost. And I know that may sound a bit odd. In the outline there, it says structure 15 steps. And in the 15 steps, I'm going to show you how to organize a paper, how to actually go about it. And there are 15 steps. And the introduction is step 12. That almost sounds bizarre, right? Like, how can it be step 12? Well, because there's so many other things you have to do first before you actually write your introduction. So, give you a little hint. I was not very strong in high school when it came to writing. And in my first year at university, I got the 2 English classes that I took. I had a C and a C+, because no one taught me this stuff. So, I would write an introduction before I did anything else. Well, the minute you do that, you have just put yourself in a box. You literally have put yourself in a box, and now you have to kind of force things into that introduction or that box. Instead, do it backwards. Do a whole lot of work first. As you'll see when we get into the lecture, do work first, then figure out your introduction. And I think one of the phrases that I have in the in the lecture on structure is you should never write an introduction. The introduction should write itself. And I know that sounds a bit odd, but you'll see what I mean when we get there. Okay? Believe me, you will. You'll see. And so, and then the first thing I want to note there, yes, notice in Lecture 4 on the right-hand column, the summary will be released on Brightspace. So in other words, if you've never used Brightspace before, the information will be in there, but you can't access it until I allow you to. Okay? That's all that means. And that's going to be true for all of the assignments. Okay? Almost all of the assignments. I shouldn't say all. But anyway, and so when it comes to an online timed, that's the phrase that I used earlier, that's all that means. You'll be like, it'll be released at a certain time and you'll have to submit it, okay, like at a certain time. And each is different. I've given you different times to do it. But then there'll be a couple, maybe, let me slow down here just a second. Same will be true for the grammar quiz. Now we're into lecture 4. Oh, sorry. Same will be true for the grammar quiz in lecture 5. There we go. Same thing, right? So you have a certain time that it's released, a certain time that it's due. And that's all. Like in other words, no exceptions. You will have to do it the minute that it's released and by the time the portal closes. Okay? And then we will have our midterm, and the same thing applies. Giving you specific amount of time. All the information will be there ready for you. All right? And I don't want to get into specifics just yet on that. We've got loads of time. We've got 5 weeks before we get into that. All right? But I just want to make sure you guys understand where we're going. All right. And then, and when you're looking at Brightspace, when you download there is no lecture 6 because that's the day that we do, or the week that we do the midterm. Every year, 1 or 2 people will send me an email saying, well, why isn't there any lecture in lecture 6? Well, you're doing your midterm then. So that just occurred to me off the top of my head. So, and all the dates are there, all the times are there, everything is there for you. And the weight, like the percentages and all of that, very clear. Then, everything after that is pretty straightforward. So anything that you see there, notice in lecture 7 where I have the changing face of literacy, that'll be in the lecture. Like it'll be there on Brightspace for you. Okay, so don't worry about that. Just looking here. No, I think things are pretty straightforward. I'm going to be getting into quite a bit in just a second, like more specifics. The only thing that might change a tiny bit, I might move lecture 9B somewhere else. Only because it's an annotated bibliography workshop, and I'm not quite sure where it will fit in. I think it'll fit in best where I have it. But as we move along, a couple of you may say, well, could we do that a tiny bit earlier? Sure, we can figure that out too. But that was one thing that I am pretty sure about it, but we can always change that. Then grammar. Okay. And so take a note right now, okay? Lecture 11. I'm going to save you quite a bit of time here. In lecture 11, I'm going to lay out for you comparison and contrast models. You do not have to watch that lecture. Shall I say that again? Comparison and contrast models they're the worst model to write an essay, especially an argumentative essay. However, you may be asked to write a comparative analysis somewhere down the road. So I've included that lecture simply to show you in case you need it. So I repeat, you do not have to watch that lecture for this course. Now, here's the perfect email that I simply do not want. When you said that we don't have to watch lecture, did you mean it? Okay, does everyone understand what I'm saying there? Yes, I did. Okay. Sorry, but I've been doing this for so long. There's just certain things that make me laugh when I get an email like that. And I'll get one. I'll get one that'll say, when you said in the first lecture. Oh God. Anyway, okay. So I hope you're laughing right now. You get what I'm saying, right? So it's there for you. You may use it down, like it may come in handy down the road, but you don't need it for this course. All right. Anyway. Oh, I enjoy life. Anyway, all right. So then on page 5, we have some minimum requirements for your assignments. And I think there was one thing. No. Okay. The only thing I would mention there in this section is where it says professor's name, workshop leader. That's only if for another course you actually have a TA. Okay, that's why I listed that there. I'm under MLA 1, 2, 3, the fourth line down. That's why it says workshop leader. For this course, you don't have to do that because there is no TA. But I just thought sometimes in another course, like what I'm trying to do with this course is to set you up for all the other courses you'll be doing with essays, right? So, but in this course, you won't need to worry about that. And yeah, other than that, I think that's pretty straightforward. So the basic, when you look at the course files that I have, the two most important ones would be the first page optics of an MLA and an APA paper. In APA, you have a title page, right? And your title is bolded, and then you have the information the way I've laid it out for you. Make sure you download whatever style you need, because that's important. That's really important for the goal of this course, is making sure you understand how to do these things, right? And so in APA, as I said, you have a title page. Title is bolded, and then you have a whole lot of other things as well, which are all explained. Then in MLA, you don't have a title page. You have that information at the top left. I repeat, top left, your name, whatever, and then you have the title centered, and then you get into the essay. Okay? So download which one you're going to be using throughout your university career, and make sure you follow that, because that's where you lose marks. Yes, it's true. Oh, speaking of which, do not ever email me asking for a rubric. I hate that term. A rubric is like grade 8. I don't even know how the hell I would do that, all right? So do not ask for rubrics at all, okay? But anyway, but one or two of you will. Like, can I have a rubric for that? No, you can't. I'm trying to give you all the information that I can here. So anyway, because a rubric is really silly. Like so I have a box and I check off this and I check off that, and like that doesn't make any sense to me. Anyway, it's very high schoolish, very. And so, yeah, so the information is right there. If you're using APA, include a title page and bold your title. Nothing else. Simple. And then, like I said, if you want the actual layout, download the example I have in course files. I think I've got 5 or 6 there, and they're just nice generic things to start with. Okay. All right. Now we're starting to get into the nuts and bolts of the course. Yeah. All right. So now we're on page 5, and now we're starting to get into the actual assignments. Okay. I'm doing this lecture at 8 o'clock in the morning, so I'm having my tea. I am not a morning person. I should let you know that right now. All right. So, first major assignment is the article. We'll be doing an article summary, and it's worth 10%. And I'm not going to read the whole thing here, but let's look at the actual assignment itself. Okay, just so you have an idea of where we're going. You'll do an article summary. And by the way, in lecture 2, I'm going to go through like everything you need for an article summary. So there's no point in me explaining that now. And again, don't email me, well, how do I do that? We'll get to it. We'll get to it. I joke about that only because there's always a couple of students who are always anticipating, right? No, we'll get to it. Don't worry. All right. So in the article summary, it says approximately 400 words, question mark. Like that's another thing. Don't worry about sending me a question like, how many words should this be? Like, I think I've given you enough information to give you an idea, all right? Like a ballpark figure. In other words, I'm just trying to remember a couple of things. Like, I've been doing this for 30 years, so I'm just trying to remember some of the funny things. Oh, word count at the end. I don't need that, all right? I can tell how many words it is, but it's somehow I have a joke there, but I'm not going to say it, about being toilet trained. But anyway, so don't worry about stuff like that. But obviously, if you have an assignment where I say a page to a page and a half, don't give me 5. Right? Like, I'm just going to get bored. So, but at the same time, don't give me like 3 sentences and then you're done. So, and again, we have a whole lecture on that, okay? Like we got lots of time for that. And so, for the article summary, there will be an article on Brightspace, and it will be like when it's time to be released, then you'll see it, you'll read it, and I've got loads of instructions on that as we go through the course. So in other words, the instructions won't be there the day of. You'll already have been given that before. Okay? You'll see. Everything has been laid out for you. And then you'll be asked to summarize it based on information from the next lecture I'm about to do. Okay? Which I may do in the next half hour. Okay? For your summary, don't worry about an introduction and a conclusion. Now, I'm going to explain all that in lecture 2 as well, but don't worry about that. Of course, if you're used to doing that, that's fine, but it doesn't really add to the summary, because the summary doesn't really have an introduction and conclusion based on your own thoughts. Well, I shouldn't say that. You'll see what I mean in a second, okay? But you may add if you wish, all right? What I mean by that is an introduction is not the best way to start a summary. Remember, we're going to have a whole lecture 2, where I'm going to give you everything you need for that. So don't worry about what I just said there a second ago, all right? Then we'll have a midterm, and that will be an article, again, based on, posted, at Brightspace. And you'll be asked to answer questions based on lectures 2, 3, and 4. And again, like, you'll see what I mean. And that's where, you'll be tested on, well, basically the summary will be on reading comprehension, summarizing, and then when we get to the midterm, it's more or less the same thing, except it'll be broken down with 3 questions. And the 3 questions, they will be very clear before you write the assignment. In other words, I'll give you a template, boom. Well, I won't give you the actual questions, but what I mean is I'll give you an indication of the questions, and I'll talk about those in a lecture before. All right? Let's see here. But basically, I don't want to confuse you. The summary and the midterm are very similar. Very similar. We're looking for the same things. It's almost as if the summary will be like a test run. Then you get feedback on that from me, and then you can write your midterm. Okay? That's why the summary is weighted nowhere near as much as the midterm. I think that makes sense, right? Okay. Now for the midterm, yes, that's important if you want to highlight that. You're not expected to write a whole essay, okay? Instead, there's the format right there. Yeah, I got a bit ahead of myself. There it is right there. So you'll be identifying thesis statements. Not sorry, I shouldn't have said that. So you'll be identifying thesis statements, identifying the points of argument. Again, if those things don't make any sense, they will. You'll see. And then argumentative strategies and the author's overall attitude towards the subject. I know that sounds a tiny bit vague, but don't worry, we'll get there. Remember, today, all we're doing is giving you a feel for the course, right? Like there'll be many things many questions that aren't answered, but they're going to be answered as we go through the course. And then citations, We'll be doing that in the next lecture. I'll be showing you some neat tricks in how do you do that in APA, how do you do an MLA, how do you do a direct citation, how do you do a paraphrase, all that kind of stuff, right? So we'll get all that done. And then your midterm should have, and this is really important, your midterm should have three separate answers. And again, this is going to be reinforced over and over again. But for some reason, every term, a couple of individuals don't follow that. So, and again, please don't email me about anything today, okay? We'll get to it. Then you'll have an outline. And the outline will be, there'll be a date where you submit the outline, but it will not be time restrained. In other words, there'll be a date where you need, at a time where you need to submit it, but you can work on that at your own pace. Okay, so basically, the first few things we'll be doing will be all time restrained. Then, as we get into the second half of the course, I'll ease things up so that you have time to work on your own final paper. And the final paper will be the culmination of many other things that we're going to do. Okay? And so here it is. So you're going to be writing an outline, and then once you get the feedback on the outline, then we will write, or you will write, an introduction with an annotated bibliography. And it's the annotated bibliography. I'm not quite sure where I'm going to include that in the lectures. I'm still trying to play around with that. But believe me, you'll have plenty of time before you need to submit that. And so once you've submitted the graded outline, then you'll start to work on your intro. And again, isn't it interesting what I just said earlier? You don't want to write your introduction early. You don't. You want to do other stuff first. Then the introduction will kind of appear. Again, if you follow the methods that I'm going to be showing you, it will make sense. It will make sense. Okay? All right. And so the outline will be one page in point form. And then I'm not quite sure how much more I should say about that. For the introduction annotated bibliography, you'll get a 10%, a grade out of 10 on the introduction, and then 5% for the bibliography. And so I'm going to have a whole template for you which shows you how to do a bibliography, an annotated bibliography, but it's not going to be anywhere near as sophisticated as what someone would expect in a fourth year or graduate course. Nothing like that at all. Okay? It's going to be very, very simplistic in terms of how would whatever source or sources you're using, how do they actually add to the paper? And I'll elaborate when we get to that. And then finally, well, I shouldn't say finally because I haven't talked about the quiz component, or maybe I did. But the quiz component will simply be a quiz based on whatever information we've talked about, for instance, in Lecture 3. But then we will have like grammar, and then we will have another one, another lecture later on, actually 2. And so each quiz will consist of 10 sentences. Okay, and you have to fix the sentences. I may have mentioned that earlier, but I just want to make sure everyone understands that. Then finally, you will have your final term paper. All right, and I've got there 1,200 to 1,500 words, but it's basically 4 to 5 pages. All right, and again, don't write me. Oh, I have 1,501 words. Is that okay? I don't care. Like. In other words, if you have a fantastic paper and it's a bit short, fine. If you have a lousy paper and it's 25 pages, yeah. Okay? I think that only makes sense, right? But anyway, all right. Yeah, so basically what we're going to be doing then, in the second half of the course, we're going to do like an outline, then the introduction with the bibliography. Like we're building and building and building towards the final term paper. Okay, and so yeah, I think it's laid out very well. And so, like I said, just send everything to Brightspace. Okay, then I'll figure it out from there. Make sure, yeah. Again, I'm going to say this now, but I don't really need to. Make sure that your final essay is written in an argumentative form. But that's the kind of stuff we'll talk about in the workshops. Like in the workshops, we'll be talking about all this kind of stuff. Like you may have a topic, and it just doesn't work in terms of an argument. And so I can help you with that. And even though the topic may work, the way in which you've set the topic up may not. So we can discuss how, okay, could we tweak this a bit? And now all of a sudden it becomes an argument. I'll give you a quick example. Okay. My final essay, the topic will be feminism. Okay, well, what about it? In other words, if you simply said, if your thesis is something like, feminism is important, well, that's way too broad. It's not an argument. It can be an argument, but it would be way too broad for a 4 to 5 page paper, right? But if we then started talking and I started to hear exactly what aspect of feminism you were talking about, okay, then maybe we can turn that into a nice specific argument. That's a good example of what I mean by, and lecture 4, turning a topic into a thesis. Okay, so we'll be getting into all that. And there it is right there. So even though earlier I had 1,500, like 12 to 1,500 words, the final paper should be around 4 to 5 pages, double spaced. Good enough. Now, I've also included, and I'm not joking, really bad essay topics. It would be way better if you came up with a topic on your own. Okay? So here we are, first class. I'm trying to make that very clear. Come up with your own topic for your essay. Because these ones here, some people like to be guided in terms of, giving some kind of direction. But I find students come up with way better topics than what I could ever provide. So, yeah. No, they're not great. Anyway. Boy, we're almost an hour in. Okay, we're almost done. So on page 8, I give you the grading system. And that's more for if you're not, like different universities have different grading charts. So I thought I should include that there. And then finally, okay? So many students argue or feel that English essays are very subjective. Well, maybe in high school that was true. I don't know. It was. Anyway, if the teacher liked you, you got a good grade. Here, we're not talking about creativity, okay? This is not it's not a creative writing course. It is an academic course showing you how to create proper arguments, okay? So, what I've done at the very end, I've given you a chart grading in general. And I've tried to indicate to you the differences between a D, a C, a B, and an A. Now, I'm not going to read all those things out to you, but if you do, let's just say you feel like challenging me on a grade, well then, we'll go to that and just take a look at, maybe I made a mistake, okay? Or maybe you're wrong. I'm kidding. Anyway, And so I'm simply trying to give you a rubric. I'm joking. It's not a rubric, but anyway. But I'm simply trying to give you an indication of what is expected, and so where the paper may lie. Okay. So today's lecture, basically, all I'm trying to do is give you a really general indication. All this information will be on, like the outline will be on Brightspace, and then as we move along in the course, things will become so much more specific. So today we were being very general, only because we're just getting started. All right. So anyway, so I hope you enjoy the course. I enjoy teaching it, and so we'll see you in the next lecture. Okay. All right. Take care.